a Saturday for everyone on your side.
Yeah, for us, the sun is still rising.
yeah, you kind of squeeze it in at the end of my day over here in the UK, so I appreciate it.
No problem. All right. I have the stream going. We are ready when you are. So, as I said, welcome. Today we have a guest speaker. It is Jack, who creates and runs CryptoHack. So thank you to Sam for inviting him to this event. I will turn the floor over to Jack, and folks, feel free to ask questions. I will do my best to watch the chats and bring up the questions to Jack as we go. But Jack, take it away.
Just unmuting myself. Hey, so I appreciate everyone for turning up. Yeah, as been said, just ask questions whenever you want. I've got the chat open on my screen as well, so I should be able to see stuff. But if I start thinking and get distracted, then I might forget to read the chat. So yeah, maybe someone can ping me if something is urgent or whatever.
I'll do that for you.
Yeah, great. So I'm really happy to be here to chat about security and cryptography in general. So first of all, good morning to you all. I'm ending my day, but I appreciate you're all starting it. So I think it's really cool that you've asked me to come have a chat and made time on a Saturday at 9 a.m. to come listen to me speak. So I'm really grateful for that. Here's a photo of the last time I was in San Francisco. It was in 2014. I'm going to try and focus on the fact that I remember it being not that long ago and not focus on the fact that I'm definitely getting old, because I felt like I was old when I was there the first time. So the plan of this talk is I really want it to be student-led. I want you to have this as a chance to ask some questions and feel like there's no stupid questions or anything. Have a chance for curious people to ask questions. But if that fails, I've got a bunch of slides and I can talk about cryptography until you're asking me to sign off. So we won't run out of things to talk about, but please feel free to treat this as informally as you're comfortable doing. So yeah, let's start with who I am. I am currently really interested in cryptography, but that definitely hasn't been my focus for a long time. I actually started education in art school, studying music, and dropped out to go start studying science when I don't know. I can't give you a good reason, but this definitely hasn't been a kind of straight path for me. And through studying science, I ended up getting really interested in physics and in particular the maths behind physics. And last year I finished my PhD in theoretical physics, studying string theory and black holes. So still miles away from security at the time, but I guess things go slowly. But during my PhD, I started playing CTFs with a bunch of friends. And in particular, I got really interested in the cryptography challenges, and from playing those on my weekends, I started thinking about maybe this is something I could be trying to do full time. And in the process of doing that, I started a website called CryptoHack with my friend, his hacker name is Hyperreality, so let's call him that. I know we were talking about hackers before, and I guess there's a kind of common thing throughout the security world. But yeah, so we made CryptoHack together in March 2020. So lockdown was just starting, and I had a bit of free time because I was procrastinating writing my thesis. And I think it took us about 6 weeks or maybe 8 to kind of sit down and create the first 70 challenges and create a website, the kind of space that we wished had existed when we were learning cryptography. And we packaged it all together and shipped it out. And for the past 18 months, it's been getting bigger, and we have about 150 challenges now, and 30,000 people have signed up to the site. So that's fantastic. And in that time, I thought, well, if I'm going to start trying to move away from physics and start thinking about security, I need to at least prove that I can do that in a kind of job space rather than just tell people that I think it's interesting. So for the past year, I've been working as a security engineer with Northrop Grumman. And you've actually caught me in my 1 month holiday between 2 jobs. So at the moment, I'm spending my days having a pretty relaxing time. But at the end of the month, I'll be working with the NCC group as a security consultant, helping them audit cryptography and do a bit of research. So that was a kind of lightning tour of the past 12 years of my life. If anyone has any questions on kind of, because I know there are students who are starting or thinking about going into security, if anyone has a burning question about any advice or why I'm doing this or why I'm not doing this, why I'm not doing physics, maybe, then go for it. Otherwise, I'll start talking more about CryptoHack, and then I'll lead into more general security stuff. Oh, nice to see that Sam also did physics. Yeah, I think you do enough physics, and then slowly you need to realize that you need a paycheck for rent, and security feels a bit easier than theoretical physics, maybe. Yeah, so the switch, it's really the same reason that I went from music to physics. I just try and follow the things that I find most interesting. And the more I studied cryptography, and I'm much more interested in the kind of math side, so public key cryptography and the elliptic curve stuff and some of the post-quantum things, they really kind of scratched the same maths itch that physics did. I just got really, really interested in it kind of naturally. And when it came to the end of my PhD, string theory was really only opening doors to academic positions, whereas cryptography felt like it was maybe a more viable career path with things in industry as well. So I wanted to do something I found interesting all day. Theoretical physics made that hard, and security and cryptography felt relatively easy in comparison. There's not a huge demand for string theorists, let's put it that way. Yeah, I can't see any more questions, so go on. So just a little bit about CryptoHack. This is kind of an advert, but because I don't make any money from it, it doesn't feel too nefarious doing it. String theory is mostly advanced math. Yeah, exactly. I've really been doing maths all the time. Familiar with the lightweight cryptography project. I don't want to predict who I think the winner will be. I mean, if you look at the post-quantum one, they're currently arguing about patents, are they? So you can design great cryptography, but then a patent can squash it. So the same thing with the lightweight thing. I'm gonna stay on my back foot and not hedge my bets. But yeah, when it's a competition and this is involved and everyone's throwing their weight around, I think there's going to be a few schemes at the end which could be used in different spaces. I don't think there's a clear winner. Cool. So CryptoHack. If you are interested in learning cryptography, this is genuinely my favorite online resource for it. Some people learn better from videos. Some people like to read textbooks. And if you want, send me a message or chat to me in the CryptoHack Discord, and I'm happy to give you references for other things. But as we've designed this website, we've categorized cryptography into different courses, and we give an introduction to various areas in a hopefully friendly and engaging way. The main focus, if you haven't played CTFs, this will feel a bit less familiar. If you play CTFs, then this is really just a permanent CTF. To do. We give you protocols that are broken in some way, and by exploiting the broken parts of the code, then you learn what to do and what you shouldn't do. And I hope it also makes people better at just reading code and understanding what they're doing and kind of common problems that come from the challenge of actually implementing these crypto systems. It's one thing writing a white paper, but then you actually have to make code do what you say it's going to do. And we split everything into covers some of the maths basics. So people are coming from different backgrounds. Someone might be very familiar with finite fields, but have no idea what a byte is. And so someone might be very familiar with different representations of byte strings, but have never heard of taking a modulus in mathematics. So hopefully we can kind of take anyone from different positions and kind of get them to the same basic understanding. And then we hold your hand through different cryptographic ciphers, AES, RSA, DiffieHellman, give examples of kind of textbook implementations of these, and then the real fun comes from the examples we give where something is broken and you can exploit that to recover secret information. And accidentally, the best part of CryptoHack, I think, comes from our Discord server, which was something that we kind of tacked on at the end as a way to have beta testers tell us how we thought the site was coming along. But we now have a really active community of experts from different areas of cryptography. And on the whole, if you have a question cryptography related, you should find an answer relatively quick, popping in and having a chat, that's all. And yeah, most of what I know about cryptography has come from my work in CryptoHack. So I'm really grateful for the project. It's been good fun. And this is just a brief advert to the students. If you're not already, go and play some CTFs. It doesn't have to be cryptography that you study. It happens to be my favorite. I'll answer that in a second. Cryptography, but also it covers a bunch of different topics like binary exploitation, web, reverse engineering. Forensics is a bit of an iffy one. Some people like it. It's not something that I like. But it's a great way to solve real problems in real time with a bunch of different people. I've got some resources at the end of this presentation with some links. So if you don't know much about CTS but want to know more, hopefully those links can get you started. And Sam has asked, have I ever looked at adding cryptocurrency to CryptoHack? That was something that we thought about adding right at the beginning. It's obviously a very new area, but has created a bunch of work and research for cryptography in general. The hesitation now is differentiating CryptoHack as a website to learn about cryptography from various cryptocurrency coins which are coming up. And unfortunately, CryptoHack sounds like it could be a coin in itself. So the more we tie ourselves to cryptocurrency, the more confusing I worry that this gets for newcomers to the site. A lot of the cryptography that makes cryptocurrency work is included in the site. It just doesn't have that explicitly shown. We talk about different hash functions. We talk about elliptic curves and pairings. So I feel like if you go through enough of the site, you should feel fairly confident at what makes cryptocurrencies secure, or in some cases insecure. But I don't have any plans to expand a kind of blockchain section talking about exactly how cryptocurrencies work. Yeah. So for those not reading the chat, Sam said it may be a wise move. 99% of cryptocurrency projects are scams. And do I think that number theory should be taught from earlier grades? I'm biased because I'm a mathematician, so I think as much maths should be exposed to students as soon as possible. I've seen some people argue that linear algebra should be exposed to students from an earlier age. I think some people do it for machine learning. Yeah, okay. So do I think number theory should be taught earlier? I don't think so. There's so much to get on top of when you're a kid. It's easy for someone who's experienced in maths to think, oh, we could probably squeeze a bit extra in there. But it's a very abstract topic and not everyone finds maths fascinating. And yeah, okay. So the mathematical burden of understanding cryptography is significant. I agree. And I think it just takes a bit of time to work through. But if you're interested, I think there's some really good resources out there to help. And simple cryptography, like substitution ciphers, are great. That's definitely my first exposure to cryptography, was spy books and puzzles and Caesar ciphers and, I don't know, the Da Vinci Code maybe. But do I think schools could be doing a better chance of exposing kids to cybersecurity? Definitely. I think if we started looking at how we keep IT secure, different kids would be exposed to these different areas, and those who suddenly develop an interest in cryptography could then start looking at maths in a more serious way. The actual number theory needed for cryptography is relatively light when compared to research level number theory. So I don't know. I'm a big believer in giving as many small glimpses at different areas to people as possible, and trying to allow those who are passionate about a certain subject to be able to follow that passion, whether it's cryptography or biology or literature. I have my interests, but I don't think my interests are more important than other people's, and school's a great chance to expose kids to these areas. So many American children are traumatized by our incompetent maths education. I think that happens in the UK too. When I tell people what I'm interested in, they usually take a step back and think I'm some kind of monster. Maths is a diversifying subject. Yeah, exactly. It's just like a clock. Right. So to move on to something that hopefully covers most people's interests, I thought I'd talk about cryptography and security and their relationship. And I'm beginning with one of my favorite comics and a bit of a caveat. The reality is, when you audit code or a piece of software and try and find vulnerabilities, it's not usually the cryptography which is the problem. Crypto nerds imagine that it is, but the reality is, okay, it's not always a wrench to find the password. But if the binary itself has something exploitable, or it's a web app with some insufficient permissions, then you can start doing things and completely evade any cryptographic measures. It's important for the cryptography to be secure, but secure cryptography doesn't make everything perfect. So what I'm going to talk about here is the cryptography point of view, but you can do all of this right and then mess up something far more simple, and the whole thing falls down anyway. So yeah, take this with a pinch of salt, but this is what I find most interesting. So this is what I'm talking about. And the way that I'm going to try and talk to you all about it is categorizing cryptographic failure into three broad categories. Technically, all of these can be related to each other. They aren't distinct. And if you have one of them, you're probably going to have all three of them. But it's a nice way to compartmentalize this, because I need to talk about it somehow. So the first one is when people decide to roll their own crypto. This can be as simple as a one-person startup where someone decides to make their own cryptography because they haven't learned about the rest of it, to the kind of giants of cryptography who 20, 30 years ago came up with a scheme that later gets broken by someone else 1 year, 5 years, or 20 years down the line. I'll give some examples of those in a second. The second common mistake is someone goes and does their research, finds a good crypto suite, uses it in the right way, but then codes it incorrectly. I'll give some more examples of that. But yeah, good intentions, but bad programming practices make up the majority of these cryptographic flaws. And the third one is more subtle, and I'll only really talk about in passing, but hopefully I'll say enough that the interested people can go and do some more research, is when the cryptography has been implemented correctly, but somehow something secret from the cryptographic system leaks in some way. That leakage can sometimes completely compromise the system, even if technically the code that people have used is correct. And before I move on, there's another question. Have I considered creating a cryptography certificate that we recognize worldwide? We haven't really thought about that. I know some sites do it. I think Pen Tester Labs do it. I think Hack the Box might now do it. And you can kind of solve challenges and have it linked on your LinkedIn. The real question is, as much as I love cryptography, the kind of worldwide certificate becomes a bit complicated. How good you have to be to make a certificate that says this person knows everything. I think a common problem with mathematicians is they always think they don't know enough. So maybe CryptoHack is sufficient, and passing CryptoHack would be a great certificate. But I'd always be concerned that there should be one more course, one more question to have everything sufficient. Maybe just badges. Yeah, we have those. So CryptoHack has a bunch of trophies, and when you complete categories, you get bronze, silver, and gold trophies, and there's a red star that gets added when you get 100%. I guess we could allow those to be exported. At the moment, it's just on the site. I think one of our users has made an API where you can kind of watch your progress. And CryptoHack itself has an API for you to query if you want. Yeah, there just hasn't been that much interest, but it wouldn't be impossible for us to include if we were going to do that. Any other CryptoHack questions before I charge on? I can't see any, so. Oh, has anyone hacked CryptoHack and cheated? No, I don't think so. I think the easiest way to cheat is to just share solutions that we don't have any measures against. Yeah, if you can hack CryptoHack and cheat, then you get an alternative prize instead. In terms of cheating, more generally, we take a fairly soft approach because the site is educational. If people want to leak information and share the flags with everyone, then it just ruins the challenge to everybody else. And if you're going to copy paste your solutions to get the flags, then I kind of feel like you're only cheating yourself. I guess if we started having certificates, then you'd have more of an issue. So that's an interesting thing to consider. The more formal CryptoHack becomes, the more worried you have to be about cheating. But for now, this can just be for fun. And if people want to cheat, then they just haven't learned anything. Yeah, there's a difference between a hacker and a mathematician, maybe, Sam. Right, so let's go through some mistakes. I thought this was a good chance to ask a kind of general question to you all. So the first mistake is engineers who decide to make their own crypto Cipher suite. I did originally think about listing a bunch of snake oil and bizarre crypto systems, but actually highlighting amateurs failing isn't particularly educational. So I thought instead what I'm going to do is look at crypto systems that were designed by experts and adopted by the community, but then were later found to be broken or less secure than we hoped. So before I turn over to the next slide, I thought I'd pause for a beat and see if anyone knows about a common crypto system or cryptographic function, which people assumed was safe, but then down the line has been found to be broken. Yep, so Jordan says MD5, that's a really good one. It's a hash function that was cryptographically secure. It's still really hard to get a pre-image attack, but collisions are relatively easy, so we've retired that as a hash function. That's true. As well as MD5, SHA-1 is now retired. Yeah, exactly. That was a famous attack. I think the website was called Shattered. But yeah, that was a collision was found between two PDFs, I think. So SHA-1, which is used for Git messages, is slowly being phased out and replaced with SHA-256. Yeah, the Merkel-Hellman knapsack attack. I don't know how, and maybe someone else can tell me. I'm not sure how used that was. It was a cryptographic cipher that was proposed and fairly quickly taken down by a lattice attack. And out of the ashes of that attack are some of the post-quantum crypto. NTRE, for example, is a modification of that, which we hope is secure. In the future version of OWASP 10, cryptographic errors are in second place. Do you think the CryptoHack project can help on the content side to avoid this? Hopefully. I mean, the more people who know about cryptography, the less likely there are to be mistakes. I need a lot more people to be playing CryptoHack. There's 7 billion of us. Yes, DES, that's another good one. I'm going to talk about that a little more on the next couple of slides, because actually there's a kind of double attack with DES from its kind of first design, and then we now have a more modern exhaustive attack. So that's kind of broken in two ways, which makes it doubly interesting. Cool. So I think you've got some of the obvious ones. So yeah, let's start with DES. So when DES was first designed, it was a Feistel cipher that IBM put forward, and the more it got used, the more popular it was, and it later got standardized. So I can't remember the acronym that they were, but they're now called NIST, but they were called something else back in the time. Anyway, Lucifer got adopted into the DES cipher, but when it was adopted, they changed a couple of the specifications. The first thing they did was they changed the S box, which is at a high level, is a substitution step in the Cipher process. It takes one byte and swaps it out for another one. The NSA recommended that the S box was changed, but they didn't say why. Because NIST required this requirement as a hard requirement, IBM allowed this. So the DES standard had a different S box. And the second thing they did was they reduced the key size. I think it was 64 bits and they got reduced to 56. Someone please shout at me if I've got those numbers wrong. But the take-home message is the NSA asked the key size to be reduced, but asked for the S box to be swapped. It later turned out that the S box was swapped to protect DES from a attack that was classified at the time. So the differential analysis that the NSA were able to do on the symmetric cipher could break the Lucifer cipher, but could not break the DES S box. So the NSA strengthened it in that regard, but the key size being reduced weakened it, and we'll see exactly how that happens later. And before I continue, there's a couple of questions. So Sam says, should we have a contest that is the opposite of lightweight cryptography, or be really, really secure at the cost of a whole lot of computation cycles? I think that's kind of what the post-quantum crypto competition is doing. It's not so much that they're interested in having a massive amount of computation cycles, but it's not something which is quite as important. Really, what the post-quantum ciphers are trying to do is find a way to encrypt things which will allow them to be secure for a long time, even if a working quantum computer is designed. I feel like talking about the quantum computation problems might take us a little bit outside of the time, but if we have time at the end, I'm more than happy to talk about that again. And the second question is, won't all crypto systems be vulnerable to cracking with enough computer power? Yes, that is exactly a problem. And if this was a different talk, I could have spent most of my time talking about relative hardness. At the moment, we ask for 128 or 256 bit security from the AES point of view. As computers stand at the moment, this is kind of age of the universe level computation times, even using every computer on the planet. So we're pretty sure that even with computer power increasing, these algorithms will be safe. I think it's 10 years or maybe 20, I can't remember. Anyway, we should be fine. And the quantum processing is a slight, again, I mentioned it earlier, it's a bit complicated. Quantum computers completely break certain cryptographic suites, but they don't break all of them. Yeah, Sam summarized it in what I was saying. Cool, so I won't go on with this too much, but outdated hash functions, we've been able to find collisions for these, which break certain cryptographic assumptions that we make about them, so we put them in the bin. We can't break everything about them. Pre-image attacks are still completely unfeasible, but we have better hashes and we don't need to use these anymore, so please don't use them. This is a bit of a strange one, mainly because we don't use it anymore, so a lot of you won't have heard about it, but RC4 is a stream cipher. And although there are ways to make sure that it's still secure, it's complicated and there have been a whole multitude of attacks against it, so we just don't use it anymore. If you want to use stream ciphers, we generally use authenticated ciphers like AES GCM or things like Char and Salsa with the associated poly authentication if we need it. And this is just a bit of a historical note. I'll show them both at the same time. When RSA and DiffieHellman were first suggested, the authors of the papers put forward a relative bit strength of the modulus and the prime, well, moduli in both cases. One of them is composite, one of them is prime. But you can see that they were roughly 200 bits. The RSA paper suggests 266 bits for a kind of fairly secure, and they said 2 to the 600 bits for a very secure implementation. I think it was 5 or 10 years, and different factoring algorithms got put out, and that has ballooned all the way up to 4,000 bits, which is a crazy increase in complexity compared to the original one. And we saw a similar thing with DiffieHellman. They were slightly more conservative and asked for a 200-bit prime, but we still now with the sub-exponential attacks we have, that's gone up to 2,000 bits. So just a small window in what we think is secure 50 years ago becomes completely insecure after 50 years. And this is seen in DES with the 56-bit key that was put in place by the NSA when it was defined. Using specialized hardware, we can now crack these. And I tried to find the time, but I couldn't. But I think at most you pay $1,000 and they can crack any DES encrypted ciphertext, which is relatively cheap considering that you're going through 2 to the 56 bits from the source of key search. So put the link if anyone wants to go have a look at the site. So yeah, so we don't just have to laugh at amateurs getting cryptography wrong. Experts are doing cryptography and they're getting it wrong sometimes. That's just how science works. So before I move on, anyone got any other questions? I can't see any, and I'm going slower than I thought. So I'm going to speed up and continue and keep an eye out for questions. Cool. So mistake 2, engineers are doing a good job picking the right ciphers and they're coding it into their programs, but they get something wrong along the way. This is far more common than the crypto suite itself being broken. And quickly, I'll give it 30 seconds. Does anyone have any ideas of what they might imagine could go wrong when you're implementing these suites? Length might need more information than length, but yeah, there could be something lengthwise. You could choose some short passwords, for example. Right, I'll jump into the next one, which I think most people won't get, and we can keep having people suggestions as we go. So the first one is bad public key parameters. So again, my bias is showing with asymmetric crypto, but let's look at some public key stuff. And if you get this wrong, the whole thing can break, even though the encryption methods that you're using should theoretically be secure. So this is my favorite stupid example because I can show the git commit of it actually happening in the wild. But it's such a strange choice that I can't quite believe an engineer did it. So what you can see here is a fix to salt stack where the RSA key generation has been changed from choosing the public exponent of 1 to the much more common public exponent of 65,537. For those who know RSA, using e equals 1 is very surprising. For people who are less familiar with RSA, what this is essentially doing is nothing to the message. So rather than timesing it by itself several times, it times it by itself no times, and you just get the message returned. So the message and the ciphertext are exactly the same. So essentially, their crypto suite was the crypto suite of doing nothing. Recently, NIST indicated AES is in good health. Do you think that AES still has a lot of life left? Yes. So AES isn't attacked by quantum computations in the same way because the quantum computer algorithms that we're worried about really affect the math side of asymmetric crypto. The best attack we have is Grover's algorithm, which is a square root complexity. So 256-bit AES becomes reduced to 128, which is why 256-bit is now being recommended, which would be secure even if a very good quantum computer suddenly popped out of the blue. So yeah, salt stack got it wrong by not understanding what the public parameters were. And here's something slightly more sophisticated. And no worries if it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But about 10 years ago, the Estonian ID cards were distributed to all of its citizens. And within the ID card, there was some RSA signing going on. So out of the blue, the Estonian IT department suddenly needed to produce a whole bunch of public moduli. That means they needed a huge amount of primes. So each modulus was the product of 2 primes, and they needed as many primes as they could. So someone found out that there was a fast way to generate large primes. And they picked P of the form K times M plus this extra piece of 65,537 to the power A. K and A are secret integers, which aren't known by the attacker, but M is known, and it's a product of the first n primes. So it has many small factors. And what happens is, even without knowing K or A, you can take the public modulus n and do a bit of maths, and you can recover K and A yourself and recover the prime. And with the prime, you can factor the modulus and completely break the system. So a shortcut to develop a whole bunch of primes very quickly leads to a completely insecure system, even though the system itself has been developed correctly. So these are two sides of the same problem. One picks E equals 1, and one does this confusing piece of maths to generate primes, but both of them lead to effectively a completely broken security system. So this one's maybe more known and is part of the symmetric cipher suites, but you can't just pick any old block mode. You have to understand which block mode you're using and why. And the classic example is the ECB penguin. Additional information: in Spain, the national ID card was also affected from the Roker vulnerability. Interesting, I didn't know that. That's why you shouldn't share faulty code. So the ECB penguin is the classic example of what goes wrong when you encrypt a plain text with repeating bytes. So what happens is each 16-byte chunk of the image is encrypted to some random value, but each repeated 16-byte chunk is encrypted to the same value. So the white of the background of this image is encrypted to the same gray-like color, and the black still has some other kind of level of maintenance. So what you get is an image where the bytes have been encrypted, but they've been encrypted in such a way that if you zoom out enough, you can still see what you're looking at. Some people don't like this example so much because you have to encrypt the bytes of the image themselves. This wouldn't work if I had encrypted a PNG of the image, for example. So I found a second example which has exactly the same vulnerability, but from a different perspective. So Adobe had a massive data leak where all of the encrypted passwords and password hints were dumped out. But they encrypted the passwords with 3 DES or triple DES, which effectively is the same thing as doing AES ECB, in that every 16 bytes of the ciphertext were encrypted to the same thing. And so the joke here is that with the password hints and the repeated ciphertext values, you can slowly start piecing everything together, because everyone's passwords are encrypted to the same if they share the same 16 bytes. For example, if someone had the word password at the beginning of their password, that would be the same for all of the different users. So this would have been mitigated if they had used something like CBC, or what they should have been doing is hashing their passwords, but I guess that's an aside. Anyway, so it doesn't just have to be the penguin, which leads to the problem, but also using the wrong block mode or the wrong cipher suite in general. If they'd use hash functions, this wouldn't have been a problem, as long as they had salted them. And I've then, I don't have hardcore examples for all of these, but here are a bunch of other ones. There's a very popular Stack Exchange answer, which shows how to use AES CPC, AES CTR, but there's a counter which is written with a Lambda function, and old Python bugs with this, and the counter just doesn't counter. So every nonce is the same, and you can trivially break the crypto system. So rather than counting, everything just stays at 0. And more generally, reused nonces are a problem. The most famous example is in the PlayStation 3, there was some signing to stop pirated disks being used, but the signing algorithm had a fixed nonce. And if you get 2 ciphertexts using the same nonce, you can take everything apart and recover the private key from the signing algorithm, and the whole thing breaks. For those who don't know, we use the word nonce because its first use was n subscript once, saying that the number should only ever be used once. There's silly bugs like returning private keys instead of public ones. So you might have a function. You might have a function that gives off a private key and a public key, and they might accidentally return the tuple of values in the wrong order. It's one of those. It's like making a spelling mistake, but you accidentally spell another word. You can't immediately see that you've got a bug in the program unless you trace everything back. There's another question here. Do you think that curve 25519 and 448 will be massively used in a short period of time? And do I consider them safe? There's always going to be an issue with the Bernstein ciphers in that NIST aren't adopting them and telling everyone to use them. So do I think it will be massively used? Probably not. But they are very popular and seemingly very safe. I would definitely recommend them, either the standard Montgomery form or the Edwards curve representation of this. For those who don't know, these curves are elliptic curves, and we use them for asymmetric cryptography. Yeah, I consider them safe. I think Bernstein does a great job and writes some really good documentation and implementation. So I think Tweet NaCl is one of his libraries that really squashes down a bunch of primitives into something which is pretty small. I think libsodium has these curves. So yeah, you can use popular cipher suites, and these curves are the ones which are being used. There's a PGP-like piece of software called RJ, which is made by Filippo. And I think he uses the 25519. He seems like he knows what he's doing. He's the cryptography head of Golang. It's good. I think I linked to his blog here. So, there's a lot of people much smarter than me who seem to trust that these curves are good. So I'm going to refer to them and say, yeah, seems like a good idea. Another example was the curveball attack, which was either 2019 or 2020. But it was a bug in the crypto Microsoft package. And rather than using secure parameters, it was found that the user could control the curve parameters and arbitrarily sign certificates by kind of cleverly picking public parameters. So that was an example of all of the crypto behind the scenes was correct, but because the user had too much control, you could do nefarious things. Yeah, and this last point is ECC is secure, but not all curves are. The kind of common example of this is with the birth of cryptocurrency, a bunch of curve-like crypto systems are coming up, in particular pairing signatures, which use the Weil pairing of points on a curve. Don't worry too much if you don't understand what that means. The take home is we use a very special curve for these pairing systems so that they're efficient. However, the efficiencies that these curves enjoy mean that the discrete logarithm problem on these curves is much easier to solve. So if you take one of these curves for a pairing signature and then import it into your project and use it for a discrete logarithm problem, then you have an insecure curve, even though everything looks like it's going right. So you've got to get the right curve for the right job. And yeah, so this last one, I'll be slightly thoughts on encryption as service tools. How do you mean? So I send someone my plain text data and they encrypt it for me, or things like Signal, which have end-to-end encryption, or there's or like a kind of trusted enclave. I think generally we should be encrypting as much of stuff as possible, but you've got to find the right people to do it. Did you have something? I don't know what HashiCorp's fault is, so I'd have to have a look. I'm sorry. I'll Google it after this chat. If you want, find me in Discord and we can have a chat about it. But cool, yeah. I just don't want to. And what do I think about this? What do I think of secret government backdoors into encryption schemes? I wish that they wouldn't do it. We have a CryptoHack challenge based on the backdoored elliptic curve random number generator. that the NSA tried to get NIST to give to everyone, which famously was exploited fairly recently to allow a backdoor into various things by other people. So I think that it was a really good example of an insecure system that had a backdoor baked into it. Isn't there a way to do it? So Sam asked if there was a way to securely backdoor an encryption system. My opinion is if you put a backdoor on your house and you unlock it, it doesn't matter how well you hide that door. The fact that it exists means that someone can use it to their advantage. I think the dual ECDRB is a really good example. If you use the NIST parameters as they're given to you, the only person who can exploit that is the NSA, because you have to know some secret information about the 2 points, which are supposedly random. But if they're not random, you can use this information between them. The attack that was done recently was that someone was using this implementation and someone pushed a change so that the points were secrets known only to the attackers. So technically this was secure to everyone but the attacker. So I personally don't think that means it's secure, but yeah, you can do some pretty clever backdoors, but it's best to just not have them at all, in my opinion. Am I aware of any tools that can analyze code and assist in identifying, for example, potentially hard-coded secrets left in repos? I can't name drop them just because I can't remember, but yes, there are tools that auditors use that they throw at Git repos to look for things that look secret. It's obviously not perfect, but an example would be some kind of AWS instance with some private keys left in a config file. Because these have a kind of known form, it's normally YAML, you can look for the kind of private underscore key and see if what follows it afterwards has a value, for example. So you can, but you'll never catch everything. And if your repo is massive, it can be hard to keep track of stuff. Yeah, so that kind of relates to this slide, but the last problem that we have in cryptography is that even if we have a good system and even if it's been coded correctly, there are certain parts of the crypto system, especially in asymmetric cryptography, but also in symmetric cryptography, of certain values which are assumed to be secret. So in AES, we have a key. In RSA, we have the factors of the modulus, or the secret private exponent. In signing algorithms, you usually have some random integer. If an attacker can recover any of these secret pieces, then the system is broken. So some examples of this might be, rather than using a cryptographically secure random number generator, someone uses the Mersenne twister. If you get enough values from a Mersenne twister, you can reverse it and recover the seed and then predict all randomness. This is a great CTF challenge, and I think we have one in CryptoHack, but we might actually not because it's so common. But it comes up a lot. This idea that you have something which looks random and the distribution is random, but it's only pseudo-random, and you can predict what's coming up next. Side channel attacks are probably the #1 vulnerability when it comes to auditing cryptography. The easiest example is watching a system performing some kind of cryptographic algorithm and timing how long it takes, and repeating measurements and being very careful, you can start to uncover things about the secrets that should be private but are exposed because of how the for and while loops are running within the algorithm. In an ideal world, the cryptographic library would have constant time implementation to protect against this, but they don't all do that. And even if you have constant time implementations, there are other side channel attacks that we can do in more sophisticated methods. And if you can recover a small amount of bits from some kind of secret value, then there are other cryptographic attacks they use mathematics to recover more of the information. A good example is something like ladder leak, which is an attack on ECDSA, where you can, I mean, technically it's less than a bit, but if you can recover 1 bit of a private key, you can use a probabilistic attack to go through the whole key and recover the whole secret and sign arbitrary messages. So you really don't need much information is the take home from that. And the last one is a bit tongue in cheek, but you can make everything perfect and you can use the most secure algorithms in the world and you can use constant time implementations, but then someone goes and leaves a password in a Git repo or on a sticky note on your computer, or in the case of the news, someone has been yelling at hackers because a reporter found out that people's social security numbers were left in HTML source code. Yeah, so you can do everything by the book, but then leak stuff in a completely ridiculous way, and cryptography still breaks. So the human factor of cryptography can lead to some big issues. And I think, yeah, so I'll leave this up, but I'll also send these slides to Sam so that people can click. But here are some CTF resources for people who want to learn more. And yeah, that's it. I had a thank you slide, but that seems to be missing from this version of my PDF. So thank you for listening to me. And we now have a few minutes left for questions. I've overrun a little bit, but hopefully that's been interesting to you all.
See, looking at my chats, I don't see any others. Jordan just put a question.
No, I don't. I haven't read much cryptography fiction. I feel like the same author did one about the NSA and code breaking, but I can't. Dan Brown. I can't remember. It's been I can't think. Cryptography stories. I think David Wong, who used to be an NCC researcher and now works in cryptocurrency, was asking the same question, but I don't think anyone had any really good examples. Yeah, so I think I replied saying that there should be something about backdoors, but I didn't know of any. Yeah, so I can't say too much about my new role because I haven't started doing it yet. But if it's advertised like it says it is, my time will be split 50% research and 50% client auditing. I don't think that would be like a day on, day off, or 4 hours on or 4 hours off. But roughly, I'll be working with clients and they'll be giving me their code and I'll read through it and try and find all the bugs and let them know how to fix them. And then in the gaps between client work, I'll be doing personal research, writing blog posts, giving talks, trying to help people do the best cryptography possible. So there you go. So Roman says The Cryptonomicon by Neil Stephenson is a great novel about cryptography. I haven't read that, but yeah. So my work for NCC is vague just because I haven't done it. But yeah, it should be 50% research, 50% auditing, with a handful of conferences thrown in there for good measure. Do I think there is not enough demand for cryptography, as in like finding a job and people hiring crypto people? I feel like I'm new enough to the area that I don't want to make broad statements. I think it's tricky to communicate the importance of security more generally. I like cryptography, but things like SQL injections or XSS vulnerabilities in websites happen still because the people designing these websites don't know enough about the security vulnerabilities. So I think the best thing that we can do is try and communicate how important good security is, and part of that is good cryptography. I know cryptocurrency has led to a whole bunch of new jobs for crypto people, so I guess we have cryptocurrencies to thank for that. But from a security point of view, I think the people at the top need to understand how important it is for security to be taken seriously. Curious if your clients would get it. Do you mean get the cryptography stuff? I mean, I'm assuming that they're coming to us for cryptography auditing because they realize it's important. Do people ask for cryptocurrency because they get confused with cryptography? Yeah. So I'm going to be sorry. It will be auditing as a service from the point of view of me working in the crypto services team at NCC Group. So people sending us an email already aware of what we're doing. Crypto means cryptography, not cryptocurrency. It depends on who you talk to. I agree with you, but I'm not sure everyone does. And people do assume that CryptoHack is a cryptocurrency thing. Sometimes we get spammed in the Discord. Sometimes I get some slightly strange messages on Twitter. But on the whole, I think most people understand what we're about. I think I'm caught up. Just scrolling through. Yeah, I think I'm caught up. Yeah, I can. Oh yeah. So we touched on introducing modular arithmetic to kids early on to help in building foundational knowledge of cryptography. Are there other less math-orientated topics that you think are important to introduce to teens? Looking at making a cryptography CTF geared towards middle and high school students. Very soft intro to cryptography is the goal. I think, this has come up a few times. I guess like security Twitter arguing among itself exactly how people should be teaching things, and I think personally the best thing you can do for someone who's 13 to 17 is expose them to things that they can find interesting. A soft introduction to cryptography, I think, is simply explaining to people that cryptography is at the center of almost everything that we do online. The S, which appears in HTTPS, the way that our phones work, what happens when we lock our phone, what happens if there's a password on your computer. I think a lot of people silently consume cryptography without realizing that they're doing it. And there's a subgroup of those people who would find that fascinating. So I think a soft introduction to cryptography would just be explaining how prevalent it is, and then explaining that it's a great way to have applied mathematics in your life in the same way that maybe physics and engineering are. I think that's something about computer science which is lacking from the education system. We're quite used to telling people that you have to be good at maths to do physics, but I think you also have to be good at maths to do theoretical computer science or cryptography. And saying that, hey, if you spend enough time getting used to this, then you can start working in cryptography and codes and ciphers. And I think there'd be a group of people who found that really exciting. Do I think we can go further and make an app or game out of cryptography? CryptoHack's my best shot at making a game out of cryptography. More than that, I guess you'd have a puzzle game, right? Where you explore a world and find ciphers, and I think that would be fun. I don't know if maybe I'm too old. There's a game called Myst that I played as a kid that was a puzzle game, and there was secrets and ciphers and stuff, but it didn't have any kind of elliptic curve problems. So because you got to take that with a pinch of salt. Secret writing spy stuff is a logical way to start. Yep, I agree. That's fun. Spies are cool. Wow. Okay, so they have someone here is doing maths in high school, and they have a cryptography session. That's very cool. I definitely didn't have that in my school. Do you think another mathematical structure from the ones we know yet would likely be used in cryptography, like elliptic curves? Yeah, I mean, the kind of number theories used in cryptography is that kind of famous thing that people make fun of Hilbert for, right? Hilbert says maths is great because, well, number theory is great because no one really uses it. Maybe I'm getting that wrong. Maybe it's not Hilbert. Anyway, as a mathematician, he said that number theory was best because it has no uses, and then it ends up being cryptography. Elliptic curves, in a sense, aren't that surprising to appear in cryptography from the point of view of the Diffie-Hellman key exchange. It's just another abelian group that we use. So the first abelian group that was put forward was the integers mod p, where p is a prime. And then Koblitz said, hey, here's another abelian group, point addition on an elliptic curve. The post-quantum competition means that we're looking for ciphers which aren't built on abelian groups. That's really what is the big problem. Shor's algorithm breaks any crypto system built on abelian groups. So something like Seaside, for example, works in the class of elliptic curves, which is non-abelian, and the non-commutative part of it. I mean, they make it commutative in their process, but the underlying structure there is non-commutative and is therefore saved from the problem. Yeah, another way to introduce maths to beginners is gambling. I completely agree. If everyone understood probability, then casinos would be empty. Yeah, so I'm sure new maths will be used for new cryptography, but I don't think we'll be finding any other abelian groups to be using. We're going to be looking for something different. So isogenies are looking at random walks through Ramanujan graphs, and you have a bunch of lattice problems, which I know less about, so I will say less about. Can't see any more questions, but happy to keep chatting. So before I go, just to explain what's on this slide, the first link is CTF time. It's a kind of website that collects information about CTFs from upcoming competitions, but it also keeps track of your team's score. And someone said steganography. I'll answer that in a second. And you can sign up and watch your team's progress and see which CTFs are arriving, and kind of make a plan in your diary about what you're going to be playing. This Zaratech link is just a huge list of CTF practice. Because it's so long, I picked a couple of my favorites. So I think I saw this on Sam's webpage, but Pico CTF is a really good starter. If you've never done a CTF before, you can sign up and do some of their challenges and really get to grips with what it means to play a CTF. I advise going through all of the different topics and seeing which ones you find most interesting. I'm biased towards cryptography, but everyone has their own interests. So start playing with everything, and then as you go into it more, there are more specialized sites. I think CryptoHack is a great one for cryptography, but there's a whole bunch of other ones. Pwn College is a really nice guided learning path through binary exploitation. Web, I wasn't 100% sure what to pick. Pentester Lab's good, but I don't know if it's the best. And reversing.kr is a really good reversing site if you're into that. Steganography is different from cryptography in that cryptography aims to obscure messages but allow them to be communicated in plain sight, whereas steganography hopes to obscure a message within something else but doesn't actually encrypt it. You can use both of them together, but the main difference is steganography hopes to pass a message between two people without anyone even realizing a note's being passed, usually by hiding it in a cover file. Are there any ciphers not necessarily practical that you find particularly entertaining? So I am in love with isogeny-based crypto. I think it is practical, but the NIST competition aren't so sure about that. So I'm going to say isogeny crypto. I think it's great. I think it should be adopted and used because the mathematics is so beautiful. But before it's widely adopted, it needs a bunch more cryptanalysis. So for the next 5 or 10 years, there's going to be a bunch of mathematicians and cryptographers looking at these systems and seeing whether they're as secure as we think they are. Yeah, so I think it's fascinating, but you won't see it in systems too quickly. Yeah, yeah, I recommend it. It's still based in elliptic curve cryptography, but moving away from the discrete logarithm problem to a problem of isogenies between elliptic curves. Will there ever be a cryptographic challenge monographic on the Enigma machine in CryptoHack? We don't have a space for classical ciphers in CryptoHack. There are some other websites which have a really good set of classical ciphers. I think it's called Mersenne Twister. I'd have to check. It's in the FAQ in CryptoHack. It has a bunch of really nice classical ciphers and classical cipher attacks and cryptanalysis on things like the Vignere cipher and things like that. GCHQ has Cyber Chef, which has the bomber implemented, so you can have a go at cracking the Enigma machine with a known crib. There's some things out there, but cryptography is massive, and we're trying to keep it focused on the more modern stuff. We don't recommend that you start encrypting your data over TCP using Enigma. Let's put it that way. So. Yeah, so hopefully I've come across as approachable, and if you still have questions, you can come find me on Discord. I'm always happy to have a DM, and we can just chat in the Discord server if you have questions about cryptography, either from a professional perspective, if people are interested in trying to find a job in cryptography and want some advice. I can't promise you the golden egg, but I can tell you the things that I did and the things that I tried and things that worked and didn't work. If I had to choose a cryptographic number, which one would I choose? I'm not sure. I keep thinking about the prime 163, but that's more from a pure maths perspective. 65537 says 65537 is even nicer when you write it in hex, which is 10001, which is how I always write it, because I always forget the order of the numbers otherwise. Fermat number 4. That's another way of thinking about it. Cool. Right. So I'm going to stop filling the space, and if other people have questions, then go for it. Otherwise, I'll sit here quietly until the end of our time together.
Yeah, well, that's great. Thank you very much for doing this.
Yes, thank you very much, Jack.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Yeah, I'll stop sharing.